Straight ahead on Law&Crime Daily. It's Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard.
She called him an old fat man.
It's insane.
You're excused, ma'am. You can have your excuse.
The highlights of Week 1's multi-million-dollar defamation suit. Plus, Jennifer and James Crumbley petitioned the court for a lower bond. But are they still considered a flight risk? And a Florida defendant is given a chance to speak.
This was a personal catastrophe in everybody's life in my family, including myself. I maintain my innocence.
When the jury comes down to a unanimous decision after a short deadlock. But first,
with regard to count 1, attempted murder of Lauren Kanarek, what is your verdict?
Not guilty by reason of insanity.
Another verdict is handed down in the ex-Olympian attempted murder case. Law&Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law&Crime Daily. I'm your host, Brian Buckmeyer. After about 18 hours of deliberation over the course of about 4 days, a verdict is handed in the attempted murder case of ex-Olympian Michael Barisone in New Jersey. Barisone was found not guilty by reason of insanity on Thursday for the 2019 attempted murder of Lauren Kanarek and was acquitted of attempted murder on Lauren Kanarek's then boyfriend, Robert Goodwin. Defense attorneys argued Barisone feared for his life at the time of the shooting and suffered from mental health issues. Ahead of the shooting, Barisone, a former Olympian, was training Kanarek in dressage horseback riding while she was living on his property. In a string of several 911 calls days leading up to the shooting, Barisone said he tried to evict Kanarek and Goodwin. Kanarek, in turn, told dispatchers she was being harassed. Over the course of several weeks, jurors heard from Kanarek and Goodwin, as well as several witnesses on Barisone's mental health. That, combined with other evidence in the case, led to the jury's decision. Thursday afternoon, the verdict was read before the court.
With regard to count 1, attempted murder of Lauren Kanarek, what is your verdict?
Not guilty by reason of insanity.
With regard to count 2, attempted murder of Robert Goodwin, what is your verdict, sir?
Not guilty.
With regard to count 2, the lesser included offense of aggravated assault upon Robert Goodwin, what is your verdict?
Not guilty.
On count 3, possession of a weapon for an unlawful purpose to use against the person of Lauren Kanarek, what is your verdict?
Not guilty by reason of insanity.
And with regard to count 4, possession of a weapon for an unlawful purpose, what is your verdict?
Not guilty.
Law&Crime spoke with Kanarek's former attorney on Friday. He was on the phone with Kanarek when she was shot. He tells us his reaction to the verdict.
Initially, I was shocked. I could not conceive of how a jury could find anything but that Barisone attempted to kill Lauren. Then I thought about it, and I kind of understand it now. The act itself of shooting a gun at somebody, most people would think is an intentional act, right? And at the time that he pulled the trigger, he intended to pull the trigger. But what was in his head? And I think what the jury decided, they had to have decided, was that such an act could only have been done by somebody who did not have the mental capacity to understand that it was wrong.
Joining us today is Law&Crime analyst Tammy Allison and co-host Terry Austin. Tammy, no self-defense argument, but not guilty of attempted murder against Goodwin. How does that make sense?
You know, this is shocking. I'm just as shocked as the attorney was. But, you know, I always talk about how the defendant attorneys, their job is to raise doubt. So the jury going back asking the judge questions, perhaps that was what they were discussing, what the defense raised, not defense, but some of these other mitigating factors that could have caused this defendant to act this way that resulted in this unfortunate death. But doubt is what is needed with the very high burden of proof that the prosecution has to meet, which is beyond a reasonable doubt he intended to murder the victim in this case.
Yeah, I guess the victims who testify in this case for the attempted murder charges didn't persuade the jury enough. Terry, what happens to Barisone when he's found not guilty by reason of insanity as to shooting Kanarek twice?
So, you know, Brian, under New Jersey law, there's what's called a Kroll hearing.
And it's based on a New Jersey Supreme Court case. The judge said that he was going to schedule that within 30 days as he's required to do. But when you're found not guilty by reason of insanity, you're entitled to a hearing to determine whether or not you still pose a threat to yourself or to others. And so they scheduled this for May 17th, and he has to be there. He has to come in person, and they will do this hearing. They will determine, they'll have evidence to determine whether or not he is insane or not, and whether or not he needs to go into the Department of Health, and if so, for how long. He could theoretically be deemed rational at this point and not go at all. But I think he'll go and then come out at a later date.
Yeah, of course, we'll give you updates as that hearing comes up here on the Law and Crime Network. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, a verdict is returned in the Todt family quadruple murder trial. And later,
this malicious lie that she started and she created, and it's gone out the door and around the world.
Hollywood heavyweights Johnny Depp and Amber Heard go head-to-head in a defamation suit. Hear testimony from week 1 ahead. Welcome back. Another verdict is decided by a Florida jury on Thursday as former physical therapist Anthony Todt is found guilty of the murders of his wife, 3 children, and the killing of the family dog. Prosecutors say Todt drugged, smothered, and stabbed his wife, Megan, his 3 children, Alexander, Tyler, and Zoe, and the family dog, Breezy, in December 2019. They say he lived alongside their bodies for weeks after they died. Todt initially confessed to the killings to police, then later blamed his wife, saying she killed the children, then herself. After a few hours of deliberating Thursday afternoon, the jury told the judge they were at a deadlock and couldn't come to a unanimous decision. Then the judge ordered them to continue deliberating. About 15 minutes later, they came back with a unanimous decision: guilty on all charges of murder in the first degree and animal cruelty for the death of the family dog.
Verdict as to count 1. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder as charged in the indictment. Verdict as to count 2. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder as charged in the indictment. Verdict as to count 3. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder as charged in the indictment. Verdict as to count 4. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder as charged in the indictment. Verdict as to count 5. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of cruelty to animals.
Ahead of sentencing, Megan Todt's aunt had the opportunity to speak. Then, as the defendant stood up and pleaded to the judge, his attorney attempted to stop him several times.
This was a personal catastrophe in everybody's life in my family, including myself. I maintain my innocence. I loved my wife. I loved my children. I was not there the night my children died.
Judge Carson doesn't have the authority to overturn the jury's
No, I understand,
verdict.
but I need to let him know.
This is not helping you from this progress on, so I encourage you to.
I'm sorry. I loved my wife. I loved my kids. They were first and foremost in my life. I did not do this. My kids and my wife were everything to me. They were the center of my universe.
Todt was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Terry, we know the sentence was somewhat mandatory based on the charge, but what was your reaction to Todt's final words in court?
You know, I'm so surprised that the judge let him go on and on like that. I'm glad his attorney got up and said, sit down. He tried to maintain his innocence, explain to the judge why he's not guilty. And he went through the aunt's victim impact statement, almost line by line, trying to refute all the things she said, including the fact that he gained weight, including the fact that he said that he was controlling, and he tried to say he wasn't controlling. Listen, at the end of the day, the judge threw the book at him. It is mandatory life, but he gave him consecutive mandatory life, and he even added another year for the cruelty against the dog. So I'm glad the judge basically made a statement with his sentencing.
Yeah, you see the judge make a statement there, and then you see the facts against him. Tammy, at one point, though, the jury was deadlocked. What do you think the jury may have been divided on that caused that deadlock for such a short period of time?
You know, perhaps the dog, because at this point, everything else is pretty clear. And it seems as if, as Terry said, you know, with the judge's consecutive sentencing, meaning that for each count, he has to serve a term of life, not at the same time concurrently. The difference is after the sentence of life, he has another sentence of life. So I think the jury was really kind of probably stuck on what to do with the animal cruelty charge because everything else seems pretty cut and dry.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I said, came back after 15 minutes, so obviously not that divided, something that can simply be resolved after a few minutes. Thank you both for the update in this, the Florida vs. Anthony Todt case. Coming up on Law&Crime Daily, the parents of the accused Oxford High School shooter want their bond lowered. Plus,
You've been watching, so you have seen parts of this trial?
Yeah.
You're excused, ma'am. You can have your excuse.
a shocking moment in the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard defamation trial. Still ahead, we take a closer look at week one. Welcome back. The parents of the accused Michigan high school shooter ask a judge to lower their bond, arguing they are being unfairly portrayed as bad parents. Jennifer and James Crumbley maintain they did not know their son would carry out a mass shooting. Both parents are charged with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter following the shooting spree at Oxford High School last November. Prosecutors say their 15-year-old son, Ethan Crumbley, opened fire in the school, killing 4 students and injuring others. He faces charges of first-degree murder, assault with a deadly weapon, and terrorism. Now, Jennifer and James Crumbley request bond to be lowered from $500,000 to $100,000. Defense attorneys for the couple argue they are not a flight risk or a danger to the public. Prosecutors push back, though, saying the pair was on the run after their initial charges. But the Crumbleys say they only left the Oxford area for their own safety. The pair is due back in court for a hearing next Tuesday. It may not work to reduce their bail, but could the argument they just didn't know their son would commit a mass shooting win them the trial?
Well, the argument they didn't know will help them, but I don't think it's going to help them win the trial. Listen, they're charged with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, and basically they're going to have to be able to dispute the fact that their careless and reckless actions actually contributed and caused to the death that occurred here. And we know absolutely from the prosecution that they have evidence going against that and going against the parents. There are 2 texts at least that say that Ethan is ill and he wants to go to the doctor, that he told his parents, they ignored him. He has a journal entry, frankly, saying that he's going to shoot up the school. So I don't think the parents are going to be able to successfully claim that they didn't know about it. And these charges, they're very novel, Brian, but if they succeed against the parents, it'll be a wake-up call to take seriously mental health issues.
All right, so I'm glad we've got the only attorney who has a federal clemency firm in the country, because I've made thousands of bail arguments, Tammy, but I've never heard that being misportrayed as a bad parent is a reason to reduce bail. Did that argument make sense to you?
It does not make sense at all. Like, where'd I do that at? Okay, I've never heard anyone make that type of argument. Nobody cares at this point if you're being portrayed as a bad parent or not. There are people that died here, children, and this is something that every parent across the country is the most fearful of. If their child is going to be at the location where there is another student that shoots up the school, and these parents here needed to come up with a better argument if they wanted to reduce or remove their bond at this point. But I don't know where they do that at.
Yeah, a reduction of bail argument can be made at any time, so long as there's a kind of change of circumstance. I know that's the typical language used, but I don't see a change of circumstance that's going to help the Crumbley parents reduce their bail. But of course, we'll keep eyes on this case as it continues. When we come back, the multi-million-dollar defamation suit of Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard.
I think that is something that is attached to him now, which trickles down to his children, you know, where I think that part, more than anything, is the part that has bothered him.
Still ahead, we bring you the highs and lows from week one of the case. Welcome back. In week one of Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard, we've heard shocking allegations, seen witnesses break down and others dismiss for watching media coverage of the trial. The lawsuit stems from a 2018 Washington Post article written by Heard. While Depp's name was not mentioned in the piece, Heard alleges she is a victim of domestic abuse. Depp argues he lost roles in both the Harry Potter and Pirates of the Caribbean franchises because of Heard's accusations. After that, Depp filed a defamation suit against Heard to the tune of $50 million. Heard countersued for $100 million. The case began on Monday of this week, where a jury of 7 jurors and 4 alternates were seated after only 1 day. On Tuesday, opening statements were presented, revealing even more striking accusations.
Mr. Depp would often retreat into bathrooms, lock the doors, wait out Ms. Heard's aggression. But his leaving just provoked her more. You're going to hear evidence that when Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard traveled together, his team routinely had to book an extra room for him so that he had somewhere to go when Ms. Heard became enraged.
He rips off her nightgown. He has her jammed up against a bar. He has hurled bottles and bottles at her. He has dragged her across the floor on the broken bottles and the liquor. He has punched her. He has kicked her. He tells her he's going to kill her. He hates her. He's pounding at her, pounding her. And then he penetrates her with a liquor bottle. That's the Johnny Depp that you're going to hear about in this case.
Johnny Depp's sister was the first witness called to the stand. She told jurors about the start and end of Depp's relationship with Heard. She says Heard filed for divorce just days after the death of Depp's mother.
What was your reaction upon hearing from your brother that he was going to marry Ms. Heard?
I was scared. I was devastated, actually, that it was going to happen as quickly as it was being pushed for. I actually tried to talk him into just waiting a little bit longer, just a little bit, and not rushing.
How did you react initially when you heard from Mr. Depp's attorney that Ms. Heard had filed for divorce?
The timing of this, it made me sick, actually. It really made me feel ill. It made me sad, frustrated. I can't even find the word to describe how I felt when I heard that the divorce was filed the day after, while I'm at the funeral home.
On day 2 of testimony, jurors heard from Isaac Baruch, a close friend of Depp's and one of the most memorable witnesses to date.
I'm not angry at anybody. I want the best for her to take her responsibility, heal, and move on. And for Johnny, his family has been completely wrecked by all of this stuff, and it's not fair. It's not right what she did and what happened for so many people to get affected from this. It's insane.
Tammy, was there any testimony that stood out to you and made you think, I don't think Heard was a victim of domestic violence in this case?
No, no testimony would make me think that. I think that it's just sad all the way around for any victim of domestic violence. This entire situation is unfortunate because myself being a survivor of domestic violence and being a woman that's powerful, so to speak, it's difficult enough to come forward, but to come forward and then face a defamation lawsuit of this magnitude is horrific. And to have anyone negate the allegations, that is another form of abuse, in my opinion. But there's no testimony that I heard that would, persuade me one way or the other, even if Mr. Depp was a survivor of domestic violence.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see when Depp or Heard takes a stand. I think that's going to be the testimony that swings us one way or the other. Terry, we've heard about the Depp and Heard's relationship, but how do you think Depp will connect that to losing these jobs?
Well, he's claiming that what she said against him hurt his reputation. And originally in 2016, it hurt his reputation, but it was when that Washington Post op-ed came out in December of 2018. That's when the reputation was really hurt. That's when he lost the Disney Pirates franchise. And so he needs to make a connection between that defamation, what she said, and the lost wages. They've had one witness, his sister so far, who sort of made that connection. She said it wasn't because he wasn't doing well, but he needs to show emails. He has to have communication, perhaps some evidence that Disney dropped him or some other movie dropped him. And that's the only way he's going to be able to show that the false statements were made, that his reputation was injured.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of Pirates of the Caribbean. Maybe it just ended because it ended, or maybe it was because of this. Of course, we'll keep track as this continues. Thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.